The only thing in baseball riskier than taking your pants off and streaking across the field at a big league game is drafting a high school pitcher. Jordan, why is it so risky?
Well, high school pitchers, look, pitching naturally is already a dangerous act, as we've learned with so many Tommy Johns over the year. And if you're throwing hard early and often, that's just the kind of thing that can scare some teams off. It is a long road from a high school pitcher to a major league pitcher. Now, that doesn't mean we haven't had some amazing success stories, right? Of course, Clayton Kershaw comes to mind, Max Fried, Jack Flaherty, Lucas Giolito coming out of Harvard West. Like, it can be done, but teams are generally trying to be a little bit more risk averse at the very top of the draft. And I do not think we will see a high school right-hander go first in this draft for the first time ever. But that doesn't mean there aren't some very talented pitchers, and we're going to talk about them. Let's tell you our 10 favorite pitchers from the high school ranks in the 2022 draft.
At number 10 is a tall, lanky lefty named Noah Schultz out of the Chicago area. It is stupid, overly simplified, oversimplifying to compare any pitcher to Chris Sale or Randy Johnson. But if you're 6'9" lefty and you got limbs like a wacky waving inflatable arm flailing two-man, that might just happen to you.
When you've shown the stuff that Noah Schultz has, over the last year or so, you can understand why it's easy to get carried away if you're scouting the sky. The problem with Schultz is due to a variety of just kind of nagging injuries, and when you're pitching in Chicago in high school, you're probably not going to get on the field until the middle of April. He just hasn't thrown that many innings. He's actually throwing in a summer league right now to get some more scouting looks. The thing with Schultz is he is committed to Vanderbilt, and people think that it is going to take a pretty high number to get him away from that commitment. We know that the Vanderbilt commits, certainly on the pitching side, are very hard to sign out of pro ball. But look, he's 6'9", he's into the mid-90s with a nasty slider. We have to have him in our top 10, even though there have been very limited looks of him this spring.
At number 9 is a high school arm out of Bainbridge Island, just west of Seattle, named J.R. Ritchie. His full name is Ian Ritchie Jr., but he goes by J.R., or is it Junior Ritchie? Do you have any insight into this before we talk about him as a player?
Yeah, I've been a little bit confused by this. I've seen his name listed both ways, but the important thing to know is that, first of all, this is not a common place that is being scouted, Bainbridge Island, but he's burst on the map a little over a year ago and is one of the more polished right-handed pitchers in the class. A little bit older, I believe he'll be almost 19, if not 19 already, on draft day. But again, this is kind of what it looks like. Very athletic. He's also a fantastic hitter in the high school ranks as well. There's a great video of him, opposing fans saying overrated. They're doing it for him when he was hitting and he hit a home run. he's going to be drafted as a pitcher. He's not necessarily in a scouting hotbed, so there's a little bit more skepticism, but he's very talented, very athletic, and mid-90s, 2 good breaking balls. He's very good.
He's got a real nice bushy head of hair, and he pitches with goggles on, so it's a look. Like, if you see him throw, you're like, oh yeah, the kid throwing 96 with goggles. Next up on the list is a guy named Owen Murphy, also from the Chicagoland area. He's a Notre Dame commit. For me, the most compelling thing about Murphy is that he wants to be a two-way guy in pro ball. Jordan, is that fantasy or reality?
This is very common with talented high schoolers, and I think Murphy would have a decent chance of getting picked, as a hitter, but he's taken such big strides on the mound recently. It's such a good delivery, so athletic, that some team's going to be like, sorry, dude, we're giving you $2.5 million to pitch. That's kind of how this is going to work. Now, look, you could have said the same thing about Bubba Chandler last year, and the Pirates have kind of toyed around with him still doing both a little bit in the lower minors, but I have to imagine his future is ultimately on the mound. I am interested in him being a Notre Dame commit. That's not necessarily a place where we've seen some of the top arms committed over the past, even though they have obviously had a fantastic program. But either way, this is a very talented arm, and he's been moving up very, very, very quickly, especially over the last few weeks, because, in Chicago, again, you're not really starting until late April.
I like that a guy named Owen Murphy is committed to be on the Fighting Irish, Jordan. At number 7 is an arm named Walter Ford, and Jordan, you mentioned to me that he has a nickname that he created for himself?
Yes, I'm not sure if he is the one that gave it to himself, but I know that he has embraced the nickname the Vanilla Missile. If you go back through his tweets this spring, you'll see that when he has a start coming up, he's at a high school in Florida, he'll be like, Vanilla Missile's throwing this weekend, make sure you're showing up, which I just love. I also love that a guy named Walter Ford does not sound like a high school person.
He's like a car salesman from 1932.
Exactly, but Walter is actually one of the youngest players in this class. He reclassified. He was supposed to be originally in the 2023 class. Now, because he's a little bit younger, he's only going to be 17 on draft day. He's a little bit less refined. Scouts that have seen him this spring, it totally depends. Some days you'll see 3+ pitches and you'll be like, what are we talking about? This guy should be one of the first pitchers off the board. Other times he'll be really inconsistent. To me, I take that as, look, this dude is still 17. If we were talking about a lot of these pitchers in their junior year, we'd be saying a lot of the same things. I'm a huge fan of Walter Ford. I think some teams, even as a pitcher, I know they focus more on age with hitters, but I think that some teams are going to be really excited to take this guy. He's committed to Alabama, but he's been famous for a while. I know he would have been a huge name for next year. Now he's gotten a little bit more clouded in this year with a deep high school pitching class, but I'm a big fan of Walter Ford, and look, if you're calling yourself the Vanilla Missile, I mean, I'm all for it.
At number 6 is an Ohio righty named John Jacob Millerheimer Schmidt. No, it's just Jacob Miller. I'm an idiot. There are a lot of things to talk about with Miller, but when you watch him pitch, the one thing that jumps out is that he has a goatee in high school.
Yes, he is a little bit older on the high school side.
Is he goated?
Ooh, that's a good question. Goatee. Here's what you need to know about Jacob Miller. Normally with the high school arms, like, okay, he throws really hard, he's big and projectable. That's not really the thing with Jacob Miller, but this dude can spin it. Spin rates off the charts, 2 fantastic breaking balls. If you're just looking for pure, nasty off-speed stuff, this is your guy. Fastball's a little more low to mid-90s, but still, this is a guy who's also been rising very fast this spring, obviously as a Midwest guy who didn't really pitch until April and May. But if you want a guy that can spin it, this is your man. And to your point, he's goateed.
My man is goateed. At number 5 is Jackson Ferris the Wheel.
Oh, I was like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's what they call him. I still prefer the Vanilla Missile as a nickname, but if you want to try to get the wheel to catch on, we will work on that. Jackson Ferris.
Hop aboard!
Ferris has been known for a long time for scouts. He got the start in the high school All-American game last year. And yeah, I mean, look, he's also just kind of what they look like. And when a guy's been scouted this much over the last 2-3 years, back to when he was an underclassman, you're just going to have a lot more nitpicking because we've seen this guy make so many starts compared to some of these guys in the northern states where he's coming on late, and maybe the less you see, the better. Jackson Ferris has been scouted for so long. He's been at IMG. So yes, when you see Jackson Ferris, right, it's easy. It's like, yeah, of course he should be one of the top high school left-handed pitchers taken. And I have a feeling he will be, just because the kind of track record you have with a guy like him is pretty rare and pretty safe, all things considered.
At number 4 is Robbie Snelling. Yes, that's R-O-B-B-Y, not I-E. Snelling is the top arm coming out of Nevada, and the videos of him throwing in high school are hilarious because it's just him in the desert striking guys out, and he did a whole lot of that this spring, breaking the Nevada high school record, K-ing 145 batters in 62 1/3 innings.
Yes, and what I love about Snelling is very talented football player as well. When we think about football to baseball, we normally think about the hitter transition, right? The big physical guy that maybe is going to go out in the outfield or maybe a speedy shortstop. But no, this guy's a pitcher, and he is huge. Like he is built, and his delivery, while it's not bad, like it is kind of a brute force situation. I can imagine being pretty terrified facing this guy in the mound. He's also been one of the biggest risers, a lefty who's been up to the upper 90s in some of his best starts. So I'm fascinated with this guy because less track record with him, but on his best day, he looks like one of the best players in this class by far. And I have a feeling that he is going to get paid pretty handsomely somewhere in the middle of the first round. But at number 3, it is Brandon Barrera. Another lefty from Florida. Now, unlike Ferris, who's a little bit more built, and a guy like Snelling, who's obviously, as a football player, very built, this guy's a little bit more lean, a little bit more loose, but also someone that has been scouted for a very, very, very long time. Very projectable. Velo comes out super easy, and some of the nastiest breaking balls you're going to see from this high school class. Also a guy with a long track record. We got the alliteration in there. Now, the interesting thing with Brandon Barrera is that, one of the themes of this pitching class, when we talk about the college pitchers, you're going to hear about this, a lot of injuries, right? Brandon Barrera decided, I'm just going to stop pitching at the end of April because people know how good I am. I don't need to prove anything else, and I'm not about to try to get hurt. He knows how risky his own demographic is, and he decided to shut it down. He has thrown a few more bullpens since then, but that was a decision that was taken in a couple different ways by, I think, scouts that have followed him. Some said, oh, he's not going to pitch for his team. He's not going to, try to go and win a state championship or whatever. And others were like, yeah, that's probably the smart move. So I'm curious to see how that affects his draft stock, but the talent is not in question with him.
It's been a tough last few years for Florida lefties under Governor DeSantis, so how high Barrera goes will be really, something to keep an eye on. At number 2 is Michigan hurler Brock Porter. Now, one of the older pitchers in the class, plays in a high school league where I believe the counts start at 1-1. So this is very different than someone who's pitched at IMG, but he is widely considered the most talented and most projectable, healthy pitcher in the entire draft class.
Yes, healthy is a big thing. Sturdy is a big thing. You look at this guy, his frame is fantastic. He's also been known for a very long time. You mentioned that high school, Orchard Lake St. Mary's. I believe they went like 44-0 or something, and they've won back-to-back state championships. Not surprising. They have a ton of D1 commits, a very talented and up-and-coming program. But man, I mean, he's been known since he was like 14. He's a little bit old for the class as well. The velo is about as good as you're going to get from a consistent basis among this high school crop. And the off-speed, particularly the changeup, which is not necessarily something you're going to see from high school arms. The changeup is probably his best secondary pitch right now, so that has teams really excited as well. So Porter seems like about a lock to be, in that top 20. He's maybe top 15, maybe even top 10 range, and I think a really good chance to be the first pitcher taken in the entire draft. But he is not number one on our board.
The number one guy on our list is right-hander Dylan Lesko. Lesko had Tommy John surgery earlier this year, but even so, you can come back from Tommy John and live a happy life, and that's what we think he's going to do.
Yeah, and I think the timing of his Tommy John in some ways is unfortunate because, he might miss still the beginning of next season, which would presumably be his first pro season. But he was seen a lot earlier on in the spring. He's at a high school in Georgia where he got seen plenty before he went down. We mentioned with Porter that the changeup is his best secondary. Dylan Lesko's changeup is one of the best changeups that any high school pitcher has had in years, on top of the fantastic delivery, the fantastic build, the fantastic velocity, as well as rapidly improving off-speed stuff. So he's the complete package, same kind of thing. Scouts have seen him forever, and he was looking as good as ever before he went down this spring. And I think a team that trusts its rehab program is going to say, hey, yeah, this guy's still worth $3.4 million. Now, where he actually goes in the draft is fascinating because there are some teams that are not going to want to waste their first-round pick on a high school righty in any circumstance, let alone a high school righty under the circumstance if he just had Tommy John. But there are going to be some teams, whether it's the Mets with those 2 first-round picks, whether it's a team like the Padres, who has never hesitated to take the top talent on the board no matter what the injury concerns are, or does he float all the way to the comp round and get overslept there? I'm fascinated to see where Lesko goes. If he doesn't get his money, Vanderbilt, here comes another one. So we'll see what happens with Lesko, but on pure talent, I think he still has to be number one on our board.
Vandy gets the arms, LSU gets the bats. Those are our top 10 high school pitchers. Like we said, risky demographic, but certainly, one of these guys is going to be an all-star. We just don't know which one. Make sure you like and subscribe down below. We got 3 more of these videos coming your way. College arms, college bats, and the all freak show list. I'm Jake, that's Jordan. Make sure you get your beer on draft list.
Draft.
Draft lists.